Welcome, everybody. Would you please stand and we recite the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I'd like to welcome everybody here tonight. First item on our agenda is the commission report from our Shelton Timberland Library, and Miss Patty Ayala Ross will be talking to us tonight.
Thank you. Good evening.
I did the best I could on the name.
Ayala it is,
Ayala.
yeah. Good
Great.
enough. You can just say Ross if you'd like to.
All right.
So thank you. Good evening. I'd like to thank you for the time on the agenda tonight to give my first quarterly report for 2013. I've provided paper copies for you, and I have some extras for people in the audience. I still can't get used to this back to the audience thing, but it is what it is, right? So we are at the Shelton Library just going steadily and strong as always. I particularly want to say that the staff at the library is amazing, incredible, hardworking, dedicated to what they do, and half of what happens there, well, 95% of what happens there would not happen without them. So when I do this report, although they aren't with me tonight, they are an incredible force to be reckoned with. Since I've been at the library, we have added 3 full-time positions, so that's really good for our local economy, good for the library, good for the community, and that's reflected in what we're able to do. So I keep thinking maybe I should change my report because it looks the same every time I give it. Maybe one of these days I'll change the color or something, surprise you. But so the Q1 numbers, circulation, I've done a comparative number between quarter 1 of 2012 and quarter 1 of 23, and circulation is a fancy name for what we check out. So I hate library speak, so I just want to tell you what all the silly words that we use are. So Q1 of 2012, we were 75,550, and Q1 of 2013, we were at 80,766. This is particularly good news in a time when libraries all over the country are experiencing dips in circulation. So I'm happy that we're seeing, and last year, I do like to brag, last year we were the only library in Timberland that had an increase in circulation. And we worked really hard on that. It's not an easy task in today's environment with everything. And I do mean everything. And so the fact that we're still checking out this number of items is a really good sign for the library. But we do have a new statistic that we're finally able to get, and I've been bugging Timberland about this ever since we started doing ebook circulation. So the number you see at the top is only our physical circulation. So the ebook circulation, now we have numbers for those. And I'm going to put a plea in, which I always put in. If you check out ebooks from the library, you have a choice when you check them out. Leslie Ann probably knows this. You have to choose your library, or you have the option of choosing your library. If you don't, it will just say Service Center. So Service Center gets the credit. So please, just take a second to drop down to Shelton so I can get those statistics. So there's a little bit of a flaw in that statistic. If people don't choose Shelton, we don't get the credit for that. But you can see that that is where the world is today. Q1 of 2012, we, from the Shelton, if someone picked Shelton as their library, we circulated 2,519 ebooks. Same Q1 2013, we circulated 4,342. So that number is just skyrocketing, and that's throughout libraries throughout the district. That's just going to keep going and going and going. We have a product that we outsource from a vendor called Overdrive. So we do not. These are not things that we scan or anything like that. These are just things that we purchase from a third-party vendor, and so we get the statistics from them. So we're finally able to get those, which I'm very happy about. Member visits, again, we're up in that, about 4,000, if you look at that number. 56,529 in Q1 2012, 59,821 in Q1 2013. It's a busy place, Shelton Library. Technology, again, our PC usage has risen. We used to average about 60% of the time the computers would be busy. When I looked at them, the statistics from 2012, which is the Q1 in 2013, excuse me, they're up to almost 68%, 67.7. So they're used, you know, 2/3, 3/4 to 3/4 of the time, something like that. Wireless usage, we had 4,940 logins to our server. That's the Shelton server, so we're the 5th highest usage of wireless in Timberland out of 27 branches. Our Facebook, we continue to use that as a really good marketing tool. And you can see here, this is just a snapshot statistic week from 5/7/13 to 5/13. We're up on likes. We're up on the total weekly reach, which is really the important number. I think I've talked to you about that before. That's the friends of friends who may not be our friends, but they still see our posts. And so that goes very, very widely, wider than you would think. TRL initiatives, we finally beat Tumwater, yay. We actually, for adult, this has been one of my goals forever. We finished finally first in adult winter reading. So thank you, shout out to Shelton. We had 133 readers this year, and those readers read 1,865 books. That's the most books read in Timberland and the most participants. So when people talk about Mason County, we read in Mason County. So we're an educated reading place, and I'm proud of that. It's terrific. Tumwater's been ahead of us 2 years in a row, and I've just been dying to beat them, and we finally did it. And we had a Kindle donated, which helped as a prize. Melanie Bacala from State Farm donated a Kindle that was our grand prize. And the previous one, right. Dave Shepard won the one this year, so. On the next page is the family read-aloud numbers. We were down just a hair, 17, 19 participants. That's fine. I mean, there's, you know, a little bit of flux, but that's our program that targets preschoolers and early learners. That's a program where we encourage families to read in every room of the house. We give them a little map. They sticker the map when they read in the bathroom or the kitchen or whatever. Some people save reading for bedtime, and really preschoolers do better if you read sporadically throughout the day or in the morning or when they bring you a book, rather than a whole big pile at the same time. 20 minutes a day can be spread throughout the day, just like exercise. So we really encourage people to do that. You can see the list here of our ongoing community programming. Again, kudos to our staff. They just keep coming to me with more and more, and I'm the one saying, whoa, do we have enough people? Do we have enough money? Do we have enough time? You know, they just really, really want to reach everybody in the community that we can. Ongoing, we do a lot of stuff for our seniors. We do a lot of stuff for our teens. We have a lot of book groups going on. Our 4th to 6th grade book group is maxed out, which is amazing and incredible. When I first got here, we tried to start a 4th to 6th grade book group, and we couldn't buy a participant. Now we've got a waiting list in that, so I'm really happy about that. We did, again, our AARP tax program. We partner with the AARP, and they come in and do people's taxes, which is a really good service for the community as well. These numbers astounded me when I downloaded them, the 2012 programming numbers. You can see I totaled the whole thing. We did last year 180 programs, and in those programs, we had 4,033 attendants. Now, if you consider we're not even open 365 days, we have 13 holidays, we have weekends, that's more than a program every day and a half of some type. So that means we're providing a program almost less than every 24 hours, which is astounding and amazing to me. Outreach, that's when we go out to the community. We go to several places and provide library services, including Maple Glen, Shelton Rehab, Alpine, Fur Lane. We bring library materials and do stories at all of those locations. And so we did that 35 times. We also do things with the schools. We go to fairs and, try to get kids to get library cards and that kind of thing. So through those, we reached almost an additional 3,000 people. New programming in 2013 Q1. I'm doing the Taking Care of Business book group with, I was approached by a member of the chamber, and that's a book group that focuses on business titles. It's a lunchtime book group, so we're trying to get people, on their lunch hour, and we're reading things like that I've never read. It's not my reading, but I'm open. So things like Steve Jobs and Malcolm Gladwell and those kinds of people. So that's been a fun thing for me. We're also doing more one-on-one. We started doing them last year a little bit, but we're doing actual one-on-one tablet classes, computer classes, so you can make an appointment with a librarian and bring your device, whatever it may be, a Nook, a Kindle, an iPad, we run the whole gamut. Cell phones, sometimes people bring their cell phones in. You'd be surprised how many, well, maybe you wouldn't be surprised how many people don't know how to use their cell phones. And we help folks get through that. We started a partnership with Hypatia in the Woods, and I'd like to really just say a word about Elspeth Pope and the contribution she's made to not only the library, but to the community. We lost her a couple weeks ago, and she was one of the first people I met when I came to Shelton. She was on the library board. She was a librarian. She was a professor of library science, and just really an amazing thinker and a wonderful person. And so when we started the partnership with Hypatia in the Woods, it's been a terrific program where they are bringing in artists, and the artists are providing a class or something at the library as part of when they come to visit at Hypatia. And it's brought some really unique programs. We had, people in there weaving baskets out of seagrass and, all sorts of stuff that we wouldn't be able to do because these people are specialists in what they're doing. We had a writer come in, and out of that started a writers group that's still functioning. So it's been a really great partnership, and I hope we can continue that. I assume that we will. Every year we run a series. This year we did do-it-yourself gardening, trash formation, which is how to take your trash and turn it into something great. That was really fun. Craft, food preservation. One of our most successful programs was blind date a book. I know, how do you blind date a book? We wrapped them up in dark colored paper and didn't give people any clue what they were about. And people checked them out, and there was a little comment card on the inside. And what was fascinating about it is they would write, "I hated this book," and then one of the other things was, "Would you do it again?" "Yes, for sure." "Would you recommend it to a friend?" "Of course, it's really fun, but I hated this book." It's like, okay. So anything wrapped in a black paper something or other, people are, remember when you're a kid and you'd pay 25 cents and get a grab bag, and, it's sort of like that, the idea that there's something great inside of that. We checked out, I can't even remember, but it was amazing. We thought we'd check out a handful, 20. We were checking out 20 a week. I mean, it was unbelievable. And then we did a really cool program, Speed Data Book, where people came in to the library and they would talk 3 minutes about, a certain title. We had people set up talking about romance novels and westerns and whatever. So they'd go for 3 minutes, and then the next, and the next, and the next, and the next. So some really unique ideas. Again, not from me, from the staff. We did a Manage Your Trees program. We had the Star Wars extravaganza, which, let me tell you, was an extravaganza. We had J.A. Jantz and a teen author showcase, which was also extremely successful. Friends and Board Business, we have a new Friends president, Deb Waslam. They've launched a new Facebook page. Several of them went to the Friends and Board Forum, which is where Timberland pulls in all their friends and board members and gives them a day of education, and just thanking them for what they do. We are still the board is pursuing a strategic building plan for, how's the building, what's the future of the building, in the future, what kind of expansion are we going to need, what kind of space are we going to need, that kind of stuff. Working on that. We have one open board position currently, so the board's looking at that carefully, who's the right person, how will they fit in with the board. And I know the board met with Commissioner Olson, sat down and talked with him. And then we partner with several groups, but these are mostly the groups that I attend here. I'm very, very happy about the Mason County Early Learning Coalition. We got it off the ground as part of a United Way committee that I served on, looking at the community, where the gaps in the community, the glaring gap was early learning services. And so we were the only county out of 5 that did not have an early learning coalition. And there is money coming down the pike from the feds and the state that we have to be ready to capture so that we can provide early learning services to 0 to 3. That's when the brain develops. It's the most important time. We can talk about graduation rates all we want, but if we don't focus on 0 to 2, 0 to 3, 85% of the brain forms between the ages of 0 and 2. We know that from our own university. It's like a world-renowned university in brain studies. So we have it, it's functional, it's up and running, it has bylaws, it has a board, and it's going forward with a very active group of people at the table. So that's probably the most exciting thing that I participated in last year. We've done a lot of work in the building, all new chairs for downstairs. We replaced the new book fixture upstairs. We replaced the teen table downstairs that was literally falling apart. Thanks to the city crew, we painted an accent wall downstairs. Amber Coast was the color. I know it looks sort of like a rusty color. The historic photo display of the library is complete. I believe is the only known existing photo of the original of the library. Hattie Case didn't even have a copy of it. I made her a copy and had it framed, but she said, "Where'd you get that?" And I said, "I don't know, I pulled it out of a box somewhere." And so we framed that, hung it, and put some information about how the library came to be named William G. Reed, because that's going to be lost as we go along if we don't tell the next generations coming up why the library is named after the Reed family. They're not going to understand that. And so we've tried to honor that heritage by doing that. And we've established the zine collection, which I think I talked to you last time I was here. And zines are pretty much homemade magazines. I think Dawn and I could go make a zine next week or tomorrow if we wanted to. And so we have a zine collection, and they're very interesting. All sorts of subjects, from home preservation to how to hop a train, so you can learn all sorts of stuff from people who've been there and done that. So we have that downstairs now. Looking ahead, summer reading theme, which I've given you the commissioners a nice little bookmark. Our theme this year is Dig Into Reading. And I'm particularly excited about our kickoff, which is June 15th this year. I was saying it was at the end of June, but Christy corrected me, our youth services person. We have pulled down the Pacific Science Center, and they are bringing in their rock and mineral display and geological display. So it'll be a big walkthrough display on the 15th. We can only afford it for 4 hours, but that's okay. It's quite expensive, but it's going to be worth it. It's a terrific display. The kids are going to have a great time, and I think the big kids are going to have a great time too. So the theme for summer reading is dig, so digging under the ground. And the science centers have always done this, brought in displays to communities like ours, and we're really excited to host them. We have chosen the Timberland Reads Together book, which is by Timothy Egan, who is the author of the Big Burn and The Worst Hard Time, which is about the Dust Bowl. So the book is The Short Nights of the Shadowcatcher, The Epic Life and Immortal Photographs of Edward Curtis. I have not read it, so that'll be fun for me. We do Timberland Reads Together every October. Apparently, Edward Curtis was a early photographer of Native Americans. So we'll be having a photography contest and, doing some things like that. Should be fun. Timberland has adopted its action plan for 2013, Strong Communities, Building Our Future. So we've done some work around that. And on the back page is just a smattering of service stories that you can enjoy at your leisure. I won't sit here and read them to you all, because I know you can read. And finally, I attached a last page here. I've done a lot of work with the staff this year on drafting our values, our mission statement, and our vision statement for the Shelton Library. And you're the first to see this document, actually, tonight. So this is our top 5 values, and these did not come from me. They did not come from the management team. We sat down as a staff, and we all did this together. And so it's very important to me that we have a teamwork environment and that everybody buys into, why are we doing this? Why do we do this every day? And, where are we going? And it's not just my plan, but it's everybody's plan. And so I'm really proud of the work we did on this. And I think the mission statement is terrifically crafted. We took these huge sentences and we just kept crossing out words, and then finally came to this, which is, together we empower and enrich our community through education, equal access, and compassionate service. So that is our current adopted mission statement. The vision statement, which we just did a couple weeks ago, Shelton will be a world-class library through innovation, advocacy, and community leadership. So that's where we're headed. And if you have any questions for me, I'd be happy to take them. Otherwise,
Boy, that was quite a report. You did a real good job.
thank you.
Questions?
Good.
I will say that good employees and good volunteers are very crucial, but I think you are an excellent leader. And I say you are truly appreciated, and you are a gift to Shelton, Washington.
Thank you very
Thank you
much.
for
I
your hard
appreciate
work.
that. Yes, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
I'll be back next quarter. So.
All right, we're looking forward to it. All right, very good. Next on the agenda is our Central Mason Fire EMS Annual Report.
Well, good
Or, I
evening.
mean, the first quarter.
The report.
Of the annual report.
You have it in front of you there. I'm going to digress and not cover everything that's in the report. We're going to talk about it. First off, I want to thank you for the support of the commission over the last year. And as well as what we found out from the library, we also have really outreached to our community as well. We've turned a lot of things around. If you'll turn to page 10 inside your little book there, you'll find that it talks about fire prevention items and a lot of our community outreach. We've probably doubled and quadrupled what we've done for community outreach out there, including we were borrowing a smokehouse for years and years to go to the schools, and we finally talk about volunteers building something. All of a sudden, a couple of my builders decided that they would make their own smokehouses, so now we have our own, and so it works out.
Is that for
very well.
barbecuing?
No, not for barbecuing, no, for having the kids go through, Mr. Mayor. So good try, though. That was a good thought. The other one that we're focusing on is what we call CERT, and if you haven't, you've probably heard that around. It's called Community Emergency Response Teams, and those are pretty critical to getting those teams out there. We have 2 that are very active in our fire district in Hartstein Island and Timber Lakes, and we found that it's now starting to grow. I know that in Belford, they put one up, and there's 2 more coming to the city soon, and those are great to have little communities there. We found that the CERT teams are extremely beneficial. We had our own once-in-a-lifetime event in the last year with the Powerline 2 fire that we all knew, and it kind of woke everybody up to how things work, so that was our once-in-a-lifetime excitement by all means. So, but we found that the community outreach and working through some social media, that was really an important one that we worked through some of the community outreach programs. So that's what's happening with those. I give you the bad news with it is we're going to head down the same path again with our wildland events. We're going to have another great summer. It's great for the community, but it's going to be a later summer as we did last year. So we're still looking at, we're probably going to be into August and September and still have the warm and dry, the dryness to it. The good news about partnerships is, one of the things that came out of it was the fact that as we went back through community-wide and looked at our mutual aid agreements, we found that most of the fire department mutual aid agreements were written back in 1985 and older. So we actually, through the Powerline 2 fire, we've decided, okay, these need to be all updated. So we have updated all of our mutual aid agreements, all of our partnerships, including Department of Natural Resources. So we find, when you have major events, they find little holes that you want to fill, and we've actually come through and fill those up. So I'll be ready for those. Now on to some response data. Central Mesa as a whole, and you can actually, if you'll turn to page 12, it will share with you the data for the entire district, and that's 4,662 responses, and that's up against, if you can see, for 2011 we did 4,295 and 4,238 for 2010, so you can see the increases in responses as well. And those are kind of some key points just from the district itself. The city of Shelton on a whole did 2,386 responses. That's up against 2071 and 2167. So you can certainly see that we're having increases all the way around there. And of course, some of the things that you like to know, and I know the mayor's extremely concerned about, what's our number one responses, and of course it's EMS and EMS rescue, which are our basic aid calls, and those are at 75.46%. They stay pretty consistent. Over the last 3 or 4 years, they've stayed right around that 75 to 76%, followed by some service calls after that, which is 7.10%. So those are kind of the strong leading, if you will, in our response times. Response time data, you can see that we, on there's some response time data, and that probably, if you look on the addendum on the back, and so it's almost to your back page 2 or 3 of the addendum, it has our response times on there, and it ranges anywhere from 5.78, and it went up in 2011, and then 5.94, and I'm happy to report in 2013 our data, and I shared with the mayor in a recent meeting we had, was we're down to 5.27 on the response data. And a lot of that is because we actually made some huge changes in the way we answer our 911 phones. And that is because we've gone ahead and said, you got 30 seconds, the call comes in, you need to get it out within a minute. And so we're strictly with that data, and I tell you, Director Evans has been doing a great job, and it's a great for us as well. The other added piece we added, not only do we have pagers, but we now have technology, as you heard from the library. Technology has hit the fire service, and we now have it to our telephones as well. And including to it, it also has a map system. So we are extremely excited that that works for us really, really well. The last part that I want to chat with, just to let you know, the district is going to run, we're going to actually put a lid lift on the ballot for our district folks, and that would be to bring us back to our 2006 levels, which is to take our fire levy from $1.14 back up to $1.48. It's $5.67 a month for a $200,000 home. We just found that the timing's right, home market the way it is, and so we're going to run that in the district as well. So that's our annual report. Questions or comments? You can read through that.
I have a question. This is the first year of the fireworks ban. What are you guys doing for education on that, or
It won't happen
preemptively
until
striking?
after this 4th of July.
Right, but isn't this year you're supposed to start
We are.
educating?
Yeah, the police department and the fire marshal's office are working together with an education piece. And I know they're moving forward with it, and they should have something ready to roll out for publication for you folks to look at a draft here in the next couple of weeks.
There was a conversation about possibly some volunteer participation, like maybe volunteers would walk in the neighborhoods and hand out the little notices saying, have fun this year, but remember, next year, if there's such a program or any room for, we had talked about it, I don't know if it was in the public that we talked about that, but I would be open for that concept.
Let's look at that.
And I don't know if it's liability or whatever issues or not, but if you needed more manpower, I think there might be some people in the community that would be open to spend their 4th walking around and just talking to people in a non-violent fashion.
In a nonviolent fashion. Very good. Absolutely. Other questions? Okay.
Very good.
Thank you much.
Thank you very much, Tim. All right, next on our agenda is a continuation of weekly commission reports here, and so we will be giving you ours. And Commissioner Pennell?
I have no report.
Commissioner Olson?
I'll be meeting with Father Joe and the Community Lifeline on Thursday of this week. And that's my
Okay.
Meeting schedule.
And this morning, I started my week off with City Administrator Dave O'Leary. We did a kind of a comedy show up at the high school talking about city government. He was a straight man, I was the comedy part, but we had a great time. It was very enjoyable to go and talk at the high school and engage the juniors and seniors in a spirited conversation about local government, and I thought it was fun, and I think they got something out of it. They seemed to enjoy it, and we were a little wondering if this is like their last week of school, and if they really wanted to talk about that, but I thought it was a good time, and so it's good to get out in the community and talk, especially to young people. Tomorrow I'll be at the LEFT board meeting, and then on Thursday I'll be attending an Economic Development Council meeting. That ends my weekly report. Next on the agenda is the general public comment. We have 3-minute time limit, and anyone from the public is welcome to speak, and so we do have some people signed up. Thank you. First on the list is Mr. Cooper. Would you like to speak to us for a while? Please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor and the Commissioners. I'm Forrest Cooper on the building at 409 Railroad Avenue. I wanted to bring to your attention another addition to a growing problem in our downtown. This last week, another retail storefront on Railroad has been filled with an office space. We have seen this trend growing more and more in the past few years. Many folks would argue that when a space is filled with a business, that's all that matters. However, when a retail storefront is replaced with an office, you not only lose the interest of out-of-town tourists looking to shop, the need for locals to frequent the downtown area is reduced as well. To add, some of these office-based businesses don't generate the retail sales taxes that are so vital for our community and city operations. I have always been a supporter of the Shop Local campaigns, and it is growing more difficult to preach Shop Local when our local retail shopping establishments are disappearing in general. This August, 2 more retail businesses on our block alone will be closing. I'm very concerned with the uncertainty that will occupy the spaces when they close. The 400 block is one of the last remaining mostly retail blocks on Railroad, and the closing of these 2 retail shops should create a concern for you as well. As a building owner and a small business operator with a retail space on Railroad, I am witness to this growing trend and understand the potential consequences more than most, and would kindly like to encourage the Commission, building owners, and others in the community to help change this trend. There are plenty of empty spaces on the upper floors of 2-story buildings on Railroad, and many spaces on side streets and back streets in the downtown area to accommodate these offices. Our town is not too far gone, and with a very few simple regulations and changes in mentality among the building owners, we can improve the quality of business, tourism, and way of life for everyone in our community by protecting our street-level retail storefronts. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Mr. Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners. Tom Davis, 170 West Bushy Road. This was taken from the City of Shelton core beliefs, which was adopted by the City Commission in May 10, 2004. Section 1, it says, "We believe that Shelton should be a visionary city, encouraging its citizens and their government to look to the future beyond the present generation and to bring such ideas to public discussion and to enhance a sense of community identity." I take those words to heart. I think part of our community identity has become our homeless situation. It is unfortunate, but it is real. And what's playing out in the papers is counterproductive. It doesn't do anything positive, and it doesn't solve the problem. So this problem is going to continue to grow unless we get our arms around it. What happens with these types of situations is they escalate into a condition that fosters gang activity. When you have poverty and homelessness and low wages, the next step in that downward trend is gang activity. What I'm proposing is a task force, a citizen task force. I will volunteer for that citizen task force to take a look at all the concerns surrounding the homeless situation and other concerns in the downtown area, so we can talk about it constructively, get our arms around what the real problem is, see if there's anything practical and cost-efficient that we can do to satisfy the concerns of the business community, to serve the people who need to be served, and possibly to get the people who are not deserving to move on. So it would be a 2 or 3 pronged approach to this homeless situation, but I would very strongly encourage you to initiate a task force comprised of citizens who want to do and not talk. I volunteer Forrest also to be on that committee. And we'd really appreciate an opportunity to give some power to the people and let them get their arms around this situation before it gets way out of hand. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Generally, I don't know, always talk and address individual situations, but one thing that I have been seeing is that over the past couple of years, Reverend Joe Michael has, I think, a very active task force already with a coalition of churches, and Commissioner Olson attends that, I think, almost every week, almost. Every month. And we have something probably already kind of in that direction, and the debate is definitely being, talked about. So to me, that seems like already an existing task force, and to me, that seems like what, they're talking just about that subject every single month, and we're all, as a community, looking for solutions that is going to be, the right solutions. So a first step, maybe we would do this, maybe we wouldn't, but a first step might be to list a list of your concerns or possible solutions and submit them to that group, because it seems like they've kind of got the ball rolling and they've been quite active in that conversation. So,
A group that's sanctioned by the city to show the city's concern and involvement in this problem. It would mean a great deal.
okay. Tom, we've heard you. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Appreciate your comments. Next is our ex-mayor, Mr. John Tarrant.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Commissioners. John Tarrant, P.O. Box 2172, Shelton, Washington. I'm here this evening. First of all, kudos to Mr. Davis for his concerns. I think that a task force probably would serve a good solution. Obviously, I would, if I were doing it myself, I would include people who are affected, i.e. homeless as well, and people in need. I'm here not for that reason this evening, but to thank, in particular, the City of Shelton and its Public Works Department for a tremendous display of effort this past week for Forest Festival, Spring Cleanup. Mr. Clark, kudos to your crew, and to Ken Stodden and company for what they do. Came downtown on my way to church on Sunday, and quite frankly, wouldn't have known there was any kind of an event that had thousands of people on the streets of Shelton. Either they cleaned up well, which I know some did, but our folks cleaned up even more so. So thanks again, and kudos to the crew. Please pass that on for me.
Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate your comments. All right, one other person. It is Miss Tracy Moore.
Hi, Tracy Moore, 611 West Birch Street. I was gone for about 2 weeks, and when I came back and was catching up on the journal the last few weeks, it looks like many things have happened, and I would like to comment. First of all, on the homeless situation, which, reading the newspaper with eyes that were out of the community for 2 years, or 2 weeks, not 2 years, I would just like to comment that the homeless situation will not disappear, and what we are doing in the way of talking, debating, criticizing is very demeaning and damaging to our city's reputation, and does nothing to fill the vacant properties and bring in new business. Why would anybody want to put a business there if all they're hearing is the huge population of homeless, which I believe is exaggerated because I work at the corner of 2nd and Railroad, and it is not a huge percentage of the people who are downtown. I believe that we should focus instead, as an attempt to bring in business and improve our community's reputation, we should focus on the available vacant buildings, on what we have going for us as a city. We have Father Joe's group, which is working really hard to help out in this situation. We have other groups that are working to better the lives of the people affected and lessen the impact on the community. So I feel like we're really doing ourselves a disservice by focusing on the negative and not looking at the balance of which is a positive of what we do have. The second thing I would like to comment on is I found out also when I got back that from what I read in the newspaper, it looks like the concerns expressed by the expert at Shelton School Districts about the substandard housing that many of our children are growing up in, that any attempts or any ideas to improve that situation, maybe educate the property owners and maybe help the city have a few more tools in order to correct that situation, was thrown under the bus, basically. So I would really, really hope that we would not disregard the testimony of the Shelton School District experts and that we would put our children's safety as a first priority, which also ties in with what Patty Ross was sharing about the Early Learning Coalition, what they're trying to do, and that 85% of brain growth happens between birth and 3. Let's do something to improve the housing situation for children who are now living in unsafe housing. Thanks.
Thank you. That completes this list. If anybody else would like to speak, there's another opportunity a little farther on down the program. And we do welcome public comments at these commission meetings. All right, have my fellow commissioners had ample time to review the information in their consent agenda packet? And if so, could we please have a reading of the consent agenda?
Consent agenda, vouchers numbered 81052 through 81118 in the amount of $311,047.87. Ordinance number 1830-0613, second reading. An ordinance of the City of Shelton, Washington relating to land use, repealing the 1995 City of Shelton Shoreline Master Program and adopting a new Shoreline Master Program.
Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move, I move we approve the consent agenda.
Second the motion?
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion carries. Item number F is old business, and we are going to be presented to us tonight a briefing on an ordinance by our Community and Economics Development Director, Mr. Steve Goins.
Mayor, Commissioners, I'll try to be brief in my presentation tonight. As you're aware, we've discussed the development standards in this update a number of times over the past few months. Most recently, we were putting some final touches on how we were addressing infill development and how that was going to work for the city as well as the applicant. In this case, our desire was to provide frontage improvements, particularly a sidewalk and curb, and try to soften the cost for the developer that would be making that proposal. Where we ended up, where we landed, was a standard that required a monolithic curb and sidewalk that the developer would install. The grades would be established by the city through a survey that they would provide, and any stormwater improvements that would trigger would also be provided by the city as part of this overall work. Having that survey information would at least provide the opportunity to have the entire block constructed, and we envision that developers would ask the surrounding property owners at that time if that's something they would like to see and contribute toward, and possibly build these improvements block by block. We described how that was going to be constructed and whose responsibilities are what portion of that in the version of the standards you have before you today. We made a number of other changes along the way here as well. I thought I'd point out some of those to you. We felt it was a good opportunity to revise the definition of development for our standards. We wanted to address whom the standards should apply to and for what particular types of projects. So we modified the definition of standard, and I believe that's on page 1.4 of the version you have before you. In addition to describing what development consists of, we wanted to have the ability to limit the types of activities that would trigger full frontage improvements. And the standards in a previous version contain some language that basically describe that. And I think the target was to allow measure of improvement to occur, such as a sidewalk or stormwater improvements or some other activities, without triggering full frontage improvements. That language was deleted in a prior version. I need to insert that into this version we have here. One of the desires in maintaining that language was to allow the city to proceed with some project funding that we've been awarded for some sidewalk work around Evergreen School. And a trigger point on that is how much of that money can we spend towards sidewalks versus how much would it take to do full frontage improvements that meet a city-wide standard. And so we wanted to make sure that those types of projects could fund the activities that were envisioned without requiring a lot of other expense. So that element needs to be revised as we complete this revision. There was a couple other printing errors that occurred during the course of putting this together. This has been a lot of swapping out of materials, but in this case we simply left out some pages, and among those were all of the diagrams that were in the previous version you looked at. I don't believe there's any changes between what we previously proposed and what we want included in this version. We simply left out those. They're referenced in the document, they're just not physically included. If you have your previous version, they're the same examples, the same drawings and figures. We just need to incorporate that into the version that you adopt. Another element that we have addressed and included in here is the consistent language for when a property needs to annex or when it doesn't need to annex to receive city services. In this case, we felt it was prudent to require property owners to commit to annexation at the time they want to receive services if they're outside the city, but not to actually require an annexation to occur before they receive that service. And so the language that's in the current version is consistent and reflects that. We included in this version, I think we talked about this before, a descriptor of what a transportation impact analysis should look like. And this is something new that we added that we didn't have before. I believe that starts at page 2.6. The intent there again was to provide the applicant of a large project some guidance as they prepare what the project impacts might be and how those are need to be addressed through an analysis for transportation impacts. That is new material, and that's been in the version for some time, and that's, I believe, the same language that you've looked at before. We discussed the clarification about what a half street is and how we feel it's valuable to retain. There's types of, there's certain situations where a development may want to improve a portion of a road and not meet full capacity of that road. And say it's an arterial road that ultimate build-out is 4 lanes, but a phased build-out would allow 2 lanes to be developed, and the 2 future lanes would be developed at a later stage, usually with some sort of agreement as to what would trigger that point. We also included some clarification on the surface and ballasting requirements, and I think that language is See if I can find it here. I'm not finding the page for that language. We discussed that a few weeks back at one of our previous sessions, and really this was just a clarification for a developer to have the option of having compaction to determine whether the native material is sufficient to build the road upon, potentially real cost savings, particularly if you're doing a lot of work. So we clarified that in the standards you have now. We also added some options for water mains. That was new language. Again, this was in areas of town where there's not high groundwater or acidic soils. We believe there was some value in expanding those standards and allowing different types of applications, so that language is in the version you have before you. That summarizes, I think, the changes that we've talked about over the course of time. I wanted to allow Gene Carr, who came all the way from Olympia here to greet you this evening. Shay Carr is a principal at SCJ Alliance, formerly known as Shay Carr Jewell. They've worked with the city to help put this together for several months. They endured a lot of the stops and starts that we put them through to help bring this together. And at a staff level, we've been working on this project almost since I started here. It's at various stops and starts. It's nice to see that we're almost there. I think this will really serve the city well. But I thought Gene should have an opportunity to come up and just say a few words, if that's all right.
Absolutely. And you have an unlimited time. We don't even push the button for you.
It's a beautiful evening, and I won't take too much of your time so that you can move on with your agenda, but I just wanted to state what a pleasure it's been to work with your staff. We've been working sort of side by side as you've been having some of these tough conversations about what to do with the various infrastructure issues along the way, and so it's been a pleasure to be able to kind of hear the conversation and understand the background behind it and see good solutions come to light. And so, I think what you have in front of you is a really solid document. It's a really complete document, and it will serve you well, especially as the economy starts to ramp up and you start to see more activity in the building world.
Did you have a date on that?
As a matter of fact, no, I'm watching the same crystal ball projections as you, so I figure confidence is half the battle, right? So I'm confident. I'm confident about it. But we did take a really careful look to make sure that where this particular document references other city rules and requirements, that you have consistency, because that's a lot of times is the hardest thing for staff to sort out with someone when they're working on a project. Which applies and how do you get them to follow the rule that is the most appropriate when there's a conflict. So that's, I think, going to be a real value to you when the economy gets hot next week.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you very much for the opportunity, and if you do have any questions, I'm certainly happy to answer them.
I have a question.
Yeah.
In your experiences as consultants, how many other similar-sized cities facing infrastructure problems like our sidewalks and streets have you experienced with unfinished sidewalk sections, and how that's approached by other cities as far as going forward? Are they following into sort of what we're trying to do, or are they just throwing up their hands, or?
It's a little bit of both, but I think Shelton's been really forward-thinking, which is consistent with the mission statement I heard read earlier about thinking about future generations and looking to how to make improvements in the quality of life in your city. So installing infrastructure in isolated patches is just one of the hardest things to do, especially when you're facing, sort of an individual homeowner, for instance, who just wants to build a house on a vacant lot. So how do you get that person to build a sidewalk in a way that's coherent and will work with a future network elsewhere? But, I think that the solution that you've come to is a really good one and should serve you well. I think there'll always be people who come and say, but there's no sidewalks, on either side of me for blocks and blocks. But the bottom line is, if you don't start building them sometime, you won't ever get the network built. And if you can show good quality progress towards enforcing a standard that helps build your network, I think it's going to help you leverage your ability to get, grants and other sorts of funding that might help build that network on, key routes, especially over time. So it's a particularly hard challenge, and in older cities especially, right? Because lots of things happened before there were rules about things like pedestrians. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
So I was reading, and I noticed that in section 2, the pages between page 26 through 54, they weren't in this version, so the sidewalk issue wasn't in this copy, but was.
There was a number of pages missing. Most of those pages you referenced were the drawings and diagrams that are in the back of each chapter. That transportation chapter has a number of them. There were a few of the pages within the narrative missing. Most of those pages were the drawings that are referenced in the work.
The one I was looking for is page 26, which describes the sidewalk regulation. 226.
The sidewalk and fringe improvements begins on page 19 in this version. It's 219.
219, okay.
And, I should mention that this does have one edit from our last meeting on A2. This now reads, "The frontage improvements shall be constructed across the entire site frontage, and on corner lots shall include the radius corner and side street improvements." In other words, you're building around the corner, and that was a decision that we discussed at the most recent meeting, and that's included. I believe that may be the only change in this particular area from the last meeting.
So the page 26 that I'm talking about that was referenced in your index up front, it says sidewalks 226. That page isn't in here. And the index in front for page, or for section 2, page 26, that's the one I was looking at. It says sidewalks, curbs, gutters, and driveways, I believe. 232, actually. It's on 232.
Those are the standards for new development.
New development.
And those are unchanged.
Not infill lots.
That's correct.
Okay. Well, thank you for illuminating that to me. Appreciate it.
Your Honor.
Yes.
Steve, just so, is it your intention, I just didn't hear you say the words, is it your intention to produce a complete document for their consideration that when they do the second reading?
That's correct.
Okay. So there's some corrections to make, and then there's some additional pages to go in, so they'll have everything that they need in order to be able to do that in the next, okay.
All right. Any other questions or comments?
I have one of each. Steve, on the infill, I know we talked about what triggers full sidewalk besides new construction is a substantial remodel, 50% of the assessed value.
That's correct.
And I remember bringing up the point as to whether a garage would trigger that if it crossed a city, accessed off of a city street. Was that going to be considered or thrown out, or what did we do with that?
We didn't include a specific example where a new structure, a separate structure was constructed like a garage or an accessory dwelling.
Or a shop or something?
And that is something the commission may want to consider. The valuation was for the improvements on the property, and whether that garage would trigger that over 50% of the value would in part depend on how big the structure is, I would think.
More likely it wouldn't.
More likely it wouldn't, that's correct. And so would the commission want to consider improvements in a case where someone's making that type of improvement, I think is what you're asking tonight?
Yeah, we never really discussed it much.
We certainly can discuss it now.
I, for one, would be in favor of adding that if you access it off of a city street, that I think that would be a good trigger for the sidewalk improvement, rather than just have another gravel driveway butting into the paved street.
I guess my only concern with that would be, a $40,000 house and the guy goes in and builds a $2,000 garage. Is he going to want to do all of that improvement? And is it going to really be necessary? Or can we just go with the 50% valuation?
Well, I don't think you're going to build a garage for $2,000.
Well, no, probably not.
But I do understand, it won't reach that 50% threshold, I know that.
So I think if we stick with the 50% threshold, then I think we're fair and equitable, and we're not imposing something on somebody that we're not asking other folks to do.
I can live with it either way, then. I don't want to make you go back and rewrite the whole ordinance. So I'm okay with not having that in there. Don's point's well taken that, a garage is not a 50% improvement of value on a property, so.
And again, that wouldn't necessarily preclude that. If it's a modest home, it might exceed that, but it's not likely it would.
Right.
It also doesn't exclude the option for the person to put the sidewalks and those in.
Anyway, yeah.
Right. I mean, a person can always do it whether they are mandated to do it or not.
Yeah.
That's also correct, yeah. The way this entire chapter is worded, you have the option of doing it this way, but you have the option of doing more if you choose.
Mm-hmm. Well, and presumably when somebody comes in for a building permit for a garage, we can talk to them about, these are some options of what you might want to consider. It's going to improve your property if you do this, those kinds of things.
I would also say that through the past 30 years or so I've been talking about this, that I do commend staff for their patience through the many retreats and different opinions on how we can address the sidewalk issue. It must be very difficult sometimes to get a consensus on how to do this, and that, we do appreciate the amount of effort it is to make a consistent document out of all of the different opinions and ideas that we have. So I think we're ready for this to be on first reading and to move to the old business for next meeting.
I just had an additional comment,
Sure.
if I may. This has been a huge issue, as the mayor said, for many, many years, and I feel really proud that we've accomplished this. As both a builder and developer in the city, I've been on both ends of it, having to do a sidewalk and then choosing to not do a sidewalk. I think what precipitated it, of course, was the grant for Evergreen School, that we were able to take advantage of a Safe Routes to School. That says it all right there. Safe Routes to School is huge. And without changing these requirements, we would have never been able to take advantage of that. I also sit on the Mason County Board of Health, and there's all kinds of statistics and studies out there about how Mason County and Shelton consistently ranks near the bottom of health, and obesity is a huge one. And we've discussed it at the Board of Health, and they're all in support of this. Anything we can do to encourage sidewalks is going to encourage people to walk. So everybody there, including a past mayor, was very supportive of this issue. Besides health and safety, we've also talked about how important it is in neighborhoods just to have that sense of community, that sense of neighborhood that gets people to pay attention and clean up their areas. I was up at a Fortura convention, and they showed these newly constructed low-income housing areas that all had sidewalks, and people were just, they're out walking, the kids are riding their bikes, there's no garbage, they're taking care of their neighborhoods. I think that's another positive example of what sidewalks will do for a community. And as our consultant pointed out, that we've discussed also, that you have to start somewhere, and I know it's been a difficult thing to birth, but I think we're on the right path with this. It's a huge, important issue. And I just feel, that we've achieved a balance between what a lot of builders want, which is no regulations and low cost, and by the city jumping in and doing the survey work and the stormwater work, we've taken a huge burden off them. So it should be a positive outcome for everyone, including builders who say they can't make a living because of the regulations. I think this should do a lot to go forward with getting them on board with this. And the last part, I guess I want to say, is that the people that still continue to want to rail on this sidewalks to nowhere stuff, I think they're being very short-sighted for the community and generations to come. That I'm glad that we've set this standard now, and I think it'll improve our community. And as a consultant said too, eventually we will get development coming back, and it's going to be a lot nicer to have than what we have at the current time. So I'm very proud of this myself, that I've been able to be involved in this, and we got it to go. So thanks to staff, you guys put up with a lot, and Dave and everybody, so on we go.
All right, so it's staff's recommendation for a first reading, and that's will be placed on old business next week.
That's correct.
Correct. Okay, so we ready for that? Can we please have a first reading?
Ordinance number 1827-0413, first reading. An ordinance of the City of Shelton, Washington relating to the adoption of updated City of Shelton design and construction standards.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Next on the agenda, it looks like, is new business, and there's none. So we have an administration report. Mr. Dave O'Leary? No report at this time. We do have a general public comment period. Again, a 3-minute. If anyone else would like to speak, we have that opportunity. Yes, Mr. Davis?
I'd like to speak. My next life, I intend to be quiet. I just have to add my voice to these abatement proposals and these new frontage proposals as being the right step in the right direction. It's so very encouraging to see this. It's been sorely lacking, I believe, for monetary reasons, but community pride is contagious. What happens is when they see the city having community pride, and now that the infrastructure is complete and the sewer is complete and all that thankless work is done, you can bask in the glory of having new sidewalks here and get the credit for that. And I think that's well deserved. I think it's good. When my wife and I, when we were building, we'd come into a neighborhood and we'd take two of the worst houses in the best neighborhood we could find, and people would come over and they would say, what is your plans, and so on. They had heard it before, and people run out of money, or they run out of dreams, or they run out of a lot of things. But when we completed it, it was much better, and people were thankful, and you can't help but pick up a paintbrush when you see your neighbor painting his house. You want to go out and paint your house. It's that herd mentality in the best sense. So what happens here from the leadership aspect is that is the positive trickle down. That's what people are waiting for. When they see your money is where your mouth is, and you're taking action, they can't help but be contaminated by good spirits and a pride in their community. And things start to fall into place. So I wanted to have that little say, and I appreciate your listening to me. Thank you very much.
Any other comment? Hearing none. Final touches, administration final touches.
Want to bring back a couple ordinances for consideration next week. We have a moratorium on bikini baristas. I want to bring that back for discussion. We're considering some regulations that would help address that and eventually lift the moratorium. We also want to revisit the ordinance that would help to address some of the junk and litter in yards and bring that back for further discussion next week as well.
Okay, very good. Any more? Our next meeting will be Monday, June 10th, 2013 at 2 p.m. here in the Civic Center. Thank you. This meeting is adjourned.